Hiya, let's have a little break from Brexit, shall we? Because something even, well, almost as spectacular is happening in the United States. Of course, all very serious. The government shutdown, which is a very alien concept to us in the UK. The idea that money isn't going to be paid to public sector workers never really happens. The way we do budgets in our country is the Chancellor of the Exchequer proposes a budget to Parliament and Parliament votes for it. The only way realistically they would ever vote against it is effectively that would be a vote of no confidence in the whole government, and then there'd be a general election, and then a government would be formed, and then it would get passed. So it's always, although in theory Parliament could vote a budget down, in reality it would basically trigger a new election. Whereas in America, this doesn't seem to happen. You have your three branches of government there. You've got the president, you've got the Senate and the Congress. So as I understand it, the Senate sets the budget, passes the budget, but it has to go to Congress. But Congress, although as far as I can tell, in theory has the power to pass it as well, but then the president can just veto it, and the Republican-controlled Congress, as far as I'm aware, has said that it's not going to pass it without the president. The president is saying he's not going to pass it unless he's been given all his billions of dollars for the wall, this wall. Now, we could talk about, the nonsense of this wall. We could point out, for example, that virtually every illegal Mexican immigrant in the United States passes into the country perfectly legally on a visa. They just outstay that visa. Therefore, a wall's not going to do that. We can also point to the fact that Mexico has ladders like most other countries. Because he's not talking about this wall being manned or anything like that. You can't man a wall of such proportions. So what's to stop someone coming along with a ladder, climbing up the ladder and over the top? Absolute madness. But he wants his wall. He wants his wall. All part of a campaign, of course, to try and say to the American public during his election campaign, you're being attacked from all sides. I'm the one who's going to keep all the outsiders out. So, as far as I understand, in a situation like this, of course, I think both sides know that there'd have to be a compromise. Obviously, the Democrats cannot just back down and pass this bill. That can't happen, because then he has won. On the other hand, the president can't back down, because if he doesn't get his money and he has to, sign the bill in the end, then he has lost, and he has lost a massive amount of face. So, but in the meantime, people aren't getting paid. And also, apparently, there's another storm going to be brewing as well. Even people who don't rely on public money to be paid, they're not public sector workers, they might be, Americans, it's quite standard, unlike in the UK, where if you're employed, your employer pays your tax for you on your behalf, effectively, and it's all correct. We don't have self-employed people, of course, do tax returns, but the idea of sending off your tax returns and then getting rebates and things like that is very, very strange. It only really happens in this country if you change jobs mid-year and initially, for whatever reason, you haven't got your tax code correct. You end up overpaying tax, and at the end of the year you get it back. But it's not common, whereas apparently it is much more common in the United States, and you fill your own tax returns in. So apparently there isn't really that many people to check those tax returns, to process them, which means people expecting rebates, it's not going to happen. And the president has said he is, obviously we know he's a lot of hot air at times, he's prepared to let this run on for years if necessary. Now, I'm pretty sure that the American public will not allow this to go on for years. I mean, you only had to look at some of the photos of rubbish bins, not just overflowing, but rubbish all around them. I have to say, though, the rubbish that's sort of strewn all around them, that's people just littering just for the effect of it, isn't it? I think that's just people making a political protest, because it's one thing to pile it high and it's not being cleared away. It's another thing to just chuck it on the ground in the vague vicinity of a bin. That's just littering. At the same time, it'll be no better where people's houses are either. But throughout all this, and then you think, so what is the compromise going to be so it looks like both sides are won? Because that's effective. When you get into these partisan politics like this. That's ultimately what the people behind the scenes, the civil servants, the diplomats are looking for. What is a compromise that allows Donald Trump to say that he won and for the Democrats to say that they won? Apparently what it is they'll chuck him some money for not a wall, but a fence. and in return, he has to promise, or I don't know, I'm guessing they want more than just his word, that a group of people, I think they call them dreamers, but basically what it is people who, Mexican immigrants who illegally entered the country, but as children. And therefore these people, have lived in America, they've grown up in America, they've lived in America all their life. They're effectively American. They're not really, but they effectively are because they've been completely assimilated into the culture, got jobs and all the rest of it, and roots and all that sort of stuff. So a promise that they won't be deported. And that may be seen as the compromise because the Democrats get what they want, whilst in return all they've had to do is chuck him a few quid to put some chain link fence down, and he gets to say that he gets what he wanted because he gets his wall. I hate doing air quotes. I have to stop myself halfway through. His wall. But throughout this, it's one of these things. I never understand things like this. When politicians right at the top level, in the heart of government, and they do the most ridiculous things, and you think to yourself, why are you that stupid? And for any other profession, if you were saying, why are you so stupid, you think to yourself, you've got to check yourself. You think to yourself, well, they're expert. How can I really say they're doing a bad job of something? But with politicians, you can, of course, because there's no qualifications. Do you know what I don't understand? I don't understand why the Democrats don't just come out with one line and one line only. Why do you need us to fund this wall? I thought you said Mexico were going to pay for it. Because I'm quite sure the Republican side of things at the moment will be, well, hang on a minute, Donald Trump campaigned for the wall, all right? He said an awful lot of stuff. But nonetheless, the thing that was constantly there was build the wall, build the wall, build the wall. It was, I think it's fair to say, a central plank. Now, you could always argue that when a president promised, there's a central plank of any president's election, and then they are elected, it's probably a fair guess to say that there's a very large number of Americans that would be in favour of this wall. So you can argue that actually, although he has no power to force the houses to give him the money for it, he said that we need it and the people seemed to agree. He can argue that. How strongly will be down to your opinion, but he could argue that. So you can see how maybe the Democrats can easily be put in a situation where it looks like they're resisting the will of the people. Yes, they don't want to fund this wall. They think it's a bad idea. But in actual fact, there's an awful lot of people who think it's a good idea. That's not helping them win seats in the next election. And remember, if this thing does go on for months, and in theory, the president could indeed keep it going on for years if no one backs down, and if he sticks to his wall, and let's say he doesn't want his fence, because anyone else, you might say that's a reasonable compromise. But you never know with Donald Trump. He does things differently. Whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, he definitely does things differently. Very unpredictable, even as politicians go. And so, someone's going to be blamed. If this, obviously people already at the moment have lost their income. This is devastating for whole families. I can't even begin to imagine how the American people ever allow a situation like this to occur. Ever. It's madness, because it happens so often as well. This isn't like just because of Donald Trump. This has happened with previous... This always happens when you've got a president, even decent presidents, and, other branches of government controlled by the other party. These things happen all the time as one side or the other tries to blackmail the other side, or maybe both. Maybe it goes both ways. And it's disgusting. You can't actually imagine it in another country. But if it keeps going on and everyone's affected, someone's going to be blamed. And I just think at the moment, the Democrats put themselves in the firing line for the ones being blamed. Whereas if they just keep coming out with the line, you said Mexico's going to pay for it. You said Mexico's going to pay for it. You can have your wall. Bill Mexico. Just say that. Just keep saying that. Because that was also the central plank. And at that point, you completely deflate his argument that the people want the wall because that's what he campaigned for. Because he also campaigned in the same breath that Mexico will pay for it. So you can then argue that actually, although people want the wall, and we, the Democratic Party, have no objection to the wall, you said that it'd be Mexico that would pay for it. Fine, no problem. We have got no objections to the wall. We're just not going to pay for it because that's not what you promised the American people. You promised the American people Mexico would pay for it. You go and get Mexico to pay for it. And just keep saying that over and over again. How is it that a sophisticated organisation like a major political party, one of only two in the United States, can't do something that simple? Isn't it baffling? But anyway, there we go. If you're from America in particular, you let me know how it's going down there where you are, because I'm really curious about this, actually. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe for further content. Share with other people who might also be interested. And until next time, I'll see you later.